All right. So from the video, and I hope you still remember from biology, homeostasis is when all the body system working together to maintain. The key term is stable internal environment. So it's kind of like a scale here, right? Seesaw. I meant one side go up, the other side must go down to balance it out. Okay. Your body system has all these organs or organ system that will respond to the external and internal changes, right? For example, if the outside is hot, that means inside your body has to kind of stabilize to make sure that you stay constant or stable. Yeah. And that could be body temp, it could be fluid balance when we're thirsty, and so on, right? All right. How do our body regulate homeostasis? There's two ways. You can have what we call an auto-regulation, intrinsic inside your body, from your cell, tissue, organs. So these are the things inside our body that help us to regulate. For example, think of body temp, for example, right? If outside is cold, you know, you're inside your body, your cell, your muscle tissue will start to contract to help you create heat, to keep the internal temperature in your body high, right? To keep you warm. So that would be an auto-regulation or intrinsic. And then there's also extrinsic as well, right? Extrinsic all respond controlled by nervous and endocrine system. For example, your nervous system will be making sure that you run around, right? So this is like a bigger system, right? And then your endocrine system, which produce a hormone, which will change your body, okay? So again, intrinsic are a little smaller term, cell, tissue, and organ. Extrinsic is more like a bigger organ system. Make sense? This is individual cell, tissue, organ. If you want on your cami, this is individual. This is more of a system, like nervous system, endocrine system, digestion system. They will do things to help you regulate extrinsically. So those are the two ways that our body regulate homeostasis. And again, the term homeostasis, all you guys mentioned is balance, right? Stabilize. So how does homeostasis work? Okay. All right, homeostasis work, we describe them by these three terms, right? You have what we call a receptor, a control center, and effector, right? Effect. Okay. A receptor is where it's like a station that detecting. It receives the stimulus. It receives the signal. For example, on our skin, right? Well, on our skin, we have sensory neuron that sense the cold or the heat. And that would be what we call the receptor, right? It receives the stimulus. Or in our tongue, right? We have a taste receptor or sensory neuron that allows us to taste things, right? And that's the receptor. And then that receptor is then send the signal to the what we call the control center. Majority of our control center are part of our nervous system or our brain, our spinal cord, our nerve. So that would be like our control center. And our control center is where you process that stimulus, right? For example, you send something on your skin that is burning you, and that signal or that stimulus is then sent to the control center where your brain will process. And once your brain process, it will then send a signal to what we call the effector. Okay. Oh, by the way, some of the question on the quiz today will also include part of homeostasis too. I just want to make sure you guys listen to the note, okay? So try to pay attention. And then your control center will then send the signal to the effector. Let's say the muscle that control your hand. Your effector will tell you, okay, remove that stimulus or continue to stimulate. Make sense? So this is how homeostasis works. One more time. When you have the imbalance, right? Things are not correct or not stabilized. Our body have regulation, intrinsic and extrinsic. It will send a signal to the receptor where it detects. That receptor is then sent to the control center where it processes the information. And then it will send to the effector where it control an action, a respond to it. Either remove that stimulus or continue with that stimulus. And that's what we call homeostasis, right? All right, it's kind of like a thermostat in your house, right? You have a receptor in your thermostat. A job is to detect the temperature in your house, right? And then it will process. It's like a control center. And if it's too cold, it will turn on the heater, which is the effector, and the heat will convert the air into warmer. And when it's warming up, your receptor will pick it up and say, okay, I don't need the heat anymore. So it will tell the control center to shut off, to control, to have this homeostasis, this balancing. If it's too hot, then your control center will turn on the AC, which make the room temperature lower. So that way your receptor will detect and say, okay, that's good enough. And then it will turn up the control center. And that's the same as homeostasis regulation that happening in your body. There are two types of homeostasis when we talk about homeostasis. One is what we call negative feedback, okay? Negative feedback is not what you guys thinking like negative is bad. No, negative feedback is when the response negates or turn off the stimulus, okay? Or when the body is brought back into homeostasis. What do I mean by negative feedback? When something is too cold, the control center will bring it back to warm, and that's called negative feedback. So the opposite. So you're bringing everything back to homeostasis. Think of homeostasis kind of like that average, that mean, that line in the middle. Things go over it, and when it's too high, homeostasis regulation will go through negative feedback to bring it back to the norm. If thing is too low, negative feedback will bring it back up to the norm. So when things return back to the norm, we call that negative feedback. All right, everybody go on to this slide, and I want you to respond to this question. Where have you seen negative feedback in your life? Give me an example. Mr. Bao, make me talk more. So that means you bring it back to normal, right? A norm. And that is negative feedback. So again, everybody make sure you answer. There's 3 more people. Positive feedback, on the other hand, okay, is the opposite. All right. So negative feedback, things go up and then it will return back to norm. Things go down, it will go back up to norm. Positive feedback is more and more and more. Things will go up and go up, go up, go up, go up, go up. It go away from the norm. Positive feedback could be things going down and down and down and down and down and down, away from the norm. Like it's not heading back to the norm. And when things are not heading back to the norm, we call that positive feedback, right? There are things inside our body that use positive feedback, okay? For example, oops, it got cut here. For example, if you have like a cut, right? You have a cut. It exposes your skin, your cell, your blood vessel. Okay, you're bleeding. So your body will go through a positive feedback. It will have a chemical that patch up the cut. All right. And this chemical doesn't go away. It will patch more and more and more and more and more and more until you stop bleeding. And that'll be a good positive feedback because more and more and more and more. Another positive feedback I want to tell you is when somebody giving birth, right? When the doctor tell them to push the baby out, right? They don't want to negate that feeling. They want to push and push and push and push. So more and more and more and more and more until the baby come out. And that's what we call positive feedback. All right. Or you can think of in life as somebody did something good, right? You give them a candy. If they did more good thing, you give them more candy. You did more and more and more and more. You don't want to cancel that, right? That's what positive feedback is. Okay. So speaking of positive feedback, okay, respond to this question again. Where have you seen positive feedback in your life? Healing from injury. Okay, that's a good example because from the note. So our system inside our body go through this regulation, right? Positive, negative feedback. And a goal is to make sure that we achieve homeostasis, or a state of what we call equilibrium. You got to remember from chemistry, right? Equilibrium means things are the same. Product and reactants are the same. They are running back and forth, right? That's what we call equilibrium. And or sometimes people, you might hear what we call dynamic equilibrium, continual adaptation, continue to fit in. Okay. Physiological system work to restore this balance, and this is the focus why we learn about physiology, like how our body work, how our body function. And ultimate goal that our body function is to create homeostasis within ourselves. Okay. And if you fail to do this, it will result in disease or death within a cell or a body. And that is the reason why we learn about homeostasis, is why we learn about physiology, is to make sure our body is in the state of equilibrium or homeostasis. Okay. Some of the homeostasis that happen in our body is the body temp, right? We know that, we talked about that earlier a lot. Body fluid composition, right? You're drinking water. When you drink too much water, then that's not good. But when you drink too little water, that's also not good. Body fluid volume, right? Waste product concentration, blood pressure, and so on. So these are some of the homeostatic regulation that our body goes through to make sure that we are at homeostasis. And that's it. Don't forget to write a summary, at least 5 sentences. Okay.